From across the Thames, the modern city looks like a towering wall of glass and steel. It's the visual peak of an urban evolution that has been continuous for 2 millennia. But the ground beneath those buildings is a graveyard of older Londons. Over 20 centuries, this location was burned to the ground, emptied by plagues, and abandoned to rot in the marshes. In most cases, when a host empire falls or a total disaster strikes, a city dies. The population scatters, and the ruins are slowly reclaimed by nature. Yet here, every apocalyptic event failed to erase the settlement. Instead, the physical destruction acted as a mechanism that forced the city to upgrade its infrastructure and its economy. The history of this place suggests that physical damage triggers immediate structural reinvention. It is a city that grows through the very crises that should have destroyed it. This map shows why the Romans chose this location in 43 AD. They identified this narrow crossing of the Thames as a perfect geographical choke point, a place to control the trade routes connecting continental Europe to the British interior. But 17 years later, a rebellion led by Queen Boudica burned the settlement to ash. Her army killed thousands and left the first version of London in ruins. Instead of retreating, the Romans immediately cleared the debris and rebuilt. They transformed the wooden outpost into a massive stone capital, constructing one of the largest basilicas north of the Alps. The attack forced the transition from a temporary camp to a permanent center of civilization. That Roman structure held until the 5th century, when the empire began to collapse under its own weight. When the legions abandoned Britain in 410, trade vanished and the population disappeared. For a moment in history, London was a ghost town. Eventually, new settlers returned for the river trade, but they were soon targeted by Viking raiders. By the 9th century, Viking armies occupied the city itself. It was King Alfred the Great who retook the city in 886. He repaired the old Roman walls and the bridge over the Thames, creating a defensible market for merchants. Confidence returned, not because the raids stopped, but because the city became the most reliable harbor for trade in a violent era. Biological catastrophe arrived in 1348. The Black Death wiped out families so quickly that mass graves like this one filled the city. The death toll was high enough to destabilize every layer of medieval society. This chart shows the economic consequence of that loss. As the population line drops, the scarcity of labor triggers a sharp upward spike in wages. This shift weakened the old social hierarchies and allowed a new class of merchants to accumulate significant wealth. That wealth gave the city the leverage to demand political rights, protected in documents like the Magna Carta. This legal parchment shows rights codified into law, allowing the city to operate with increasing independence from the crown. By 1649, that shift in power reached a breaking point. London's financial and political weight backed Parliament in a civil war against King Charles I, eventually leading to the king's public execution. The city's ability to absorb the shock of the plague over 3 centuries helped move ultimate authority away from hereditary monarchs and toward urban financial institutions. The physical city faced its final reset in 1666. In just 4 days, the Great Fire consumed the tightly packed wooden houses of the medieval era, leaving thousands homeless. The recovery was immediate and total. Led by architect Christopher Wren, the city banned wooden construction, rebuilding with modern stone and brick to prevent future disasters. The new St. Paul's Cathedral became the symbol of this upgraded city. Its massive stone facade represented a metropolis that was now far more resilient to fire than the one it replaced. This reinforced the local psychology. Londoners began to see their city not as a fragile settlement, but as an entity that gains strength from the process of rebuilding. By the 1800s, this reinvention turned London into the command center of a global empire. Cargo from every continent flowed through these docks, managed by the banks and insurance companies that now dominated the city. But industrial growth was brutal. While wealth grew, millions lived in polluted slums, facing extreme inequality and the harsh reality of factory labor. These stories were famously captured by Charles Dickens, whose work exposed the dark side of a city that was modernizing at a staggering human cost. Yet, even in those conditions, the population exploded. People kept arriving because the city offered a density of opportunity that didn't exist anywhere else, even when the environment was harsh. History shows the cities shaping the world are rarely the ones that avoid conflict or disaster. They are the ones capable of adapting faster than the crisis can destroy them. London's 2,000-year timeline proves that long-term survival isn't about resisting change. It is about building a society that treats every catastrophe as a reason to rebuild.